Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles. Welcome back to another episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Today we're talking all about community media. We've got some great representatives here. Kerri VanderHoff is here, an independent consultant and executive director of the Coalition for Community Development. Hi, Kerri.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
Hey, doing pretty good. We also got Joe Zook, production manager at GRTV from the Community Media Center. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Randy. Thanks for having me.
And we've got Jasmine Fuentes from the GR Media and Film Incubator, or GR Hey, Jasmine.
Hi, nice to be here.
So to the group, what is the term community media? What does that mean to each of you?
Well, I see it as a time for people to take back the airwaves. And that comes from back when we only had airwaves before the internet. But that's where I was first introduced to community media, was in Boston through the community access TV station there. And the way that they described it was that cable channels got to have all those channels, and where's our channels where we get to speak and decide what is being said. And now there's lots of different forms, but that's what it's still about, is getting to shape our own narratives and not having only corporations be in charge of what goes out to the people.
Yeah, access is fundamental to community media. I mean, that's really the community component. It's democratic. When we think about that, it's hyper-local and it's accessible tools. It's a platform for free expression. Jasmine said it's unbound by those corporate interests and algorithms. And so it's all about access. It's the tools, it's the community, it's the platform, it's the ability to build and develop and grow community using media.
Hyperlocal is one of the things I think of as well, and accessibility. It's the ability, especially for marginalized voices that don't quite get amplified enough, and it's a chance to explore nuances in storytelling, because you don't have to necessarily make it for a larger audience and just hit the highlights, right? You can dig deep into the humanity of the stories and really reveal these sort of local and diverse differences and commonalities as well. So I really appreciate that part of it. So as executive director of the Coalition for Community Development, I do other projects as well as an independent consultant, but my main work is as the executive director. It really is about working with residents. I live out in Muskegon, so Muskegon Heights is our base of operations, and it really is about understanding from a resident-led perspective the needs, the strengths, the stories of the community, and sharing those in order to create sort of a cohesive community action, advocacy.
And are people bringing you stories, or how do you find these community stories that you're putting on the airwaves?
So mostly it's in the work that we do with different events that are happening, community gardens, beautification, libraries we work a lot with, and sometimes collaborating with bigger organizations like the local health system. So it's in the work that we're already doing and addressing sort of issues, building off strengths of the community. And then storytelling is a way to really move those projects forward in a way that is more relatable, I think, than handing over a sheet of written word. To be able to hear from people in their own voice, the residents telling their own stories, is very powerful to move those projects ahead.
That is very special. Jasmine, do you want to tell us a little bit about GR the good work that you're doing out there?
Well, we started with the production of a documentary about the Black freedom struggle in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's based on a book called A City Within a City by Todd Robinson. And so we knew that we wanted this story to be told by people who have lived it, rather than other people coming from outside and telling the story. That meant not just the verbal narration of the stories, but also even who's carrying the cameras, who's holding the microphones. That was a challenge, to find enough people locally with a high level of cinema skills that we were looking for. And so we wanted to build an incubator to help move along the skills of people who were amateurs in it locally. And so that's what we've been doing, is helping people to hone their skills, figure out exactly where they want to go with them, and eventually get people into full-time work. Usually in the media world, or in the video production world, that a lot of times means freelance work. We are very very happy to have just counted our 6th member who has quit her boring daytime job and gone full time into media production. And so the goal is that as all of our creators, we call them, the skills to be able to convey their own stories and the stories of others, they'll start collecting stories from around them and helping everyone build their skills in putting out the narrative that they want to put out.
That is awesome. What are some of those narratives, some of those topics that you're seeing pick up? Is it different than you're seeing in national or corporate media?
Well, right now we're focused on collecting the stories that are in the book or that go along with the stories of the book. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on. But as people get trained and start finding more stories of their own, some of the things that we're seeing already is that they're uplifting candidates for political office, for the smaller offices. The candidates get to decide how they're going to tell their story. And we have some small business owners who want to talk about how they came to start up their business and why it matters to them. Even filmmakers, people who are making short films, we interview them. Thanks to the Community Media Center for helping us out with that. They are our landlord and partners in many ways. We have this great podcast room, and we bring in creators who tell their story about what drew them to wanting to be a part of a creative community where people are in charge of their own stories.
That's incredible. I just hear neighborhood so much throughout of what you're talking about between working with Joe and GRTV, and the audio listeners couldn't hear that, but he was putting up a heart sign as you were talking about that, and these grassroots stories that are being told. That is so cool. Joseph, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at GRTV.
GRTV and the Community Media Center is multifaceted, right? So GRTV is a service of the Community Media Center. The Community Media Center touches on various corners of this media landscape. We have GRTV. We also have WYCE, which is listener-supported and volunteer-run radio. We have the Wealthy Theater. Local listeners will be familiar with the Wealthy Theater. And we also have the Rapidian, which is citizen journalism. That's our e-newspaper. Community Media Center as a whole is helping steward and support various forms of community media. My purview is mostly with GRTV specifically. We are the public access channel here in Grand Rapids. And what I do with GRTV specifically, I'm the production manager. And what that means for us is that most of the work I'm doing, it's multi-pronged, as all of our work is. But I do our for-hire video services. I produce our grant-funded documentary projects if and when we have those, and we're also developing a media preservation wing here. Media preservation and archiving, especially of outmoded media, analog video, this sort of thing. This is an important component of community storytelling. The through line is immensely important. Getting new stories out is equally important, but we also don't want to lose those histories from past generations. The tapes that still exist, that haven't been digitized, they don't last forever. They're in states of decay, and so it's important to save that media. So that is a new project that we're working on here. And then our production services is really almost exclusively with other nonprofits, community partners, and also local government. But that is producing media and telling stories for our community partners. Community media is oftentimes individual stories, but we are all this community together, and we have a ton of really important and meaningful nonprofit organizations here in West Michigan. And so we partner with a lot of them to help them get their messages out.
So it's crazy to me that at this point in 2024, with the way the media landscape looks, a lot of it's so global. What is the history of like a community media station like GRTV? Like, how did you get carved into the landscape? And it sounds like you're doing an incredible job with grant funding and for hire and surviving today. But how did this even start?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say we're doing our best. The origins of public access and cable access, it originates from the cable companies paying franchise fees to city governments and municipalities. It's for right-of-way, for use of community and municipal resources, for access to lines underground to run cable, these sorts of things. And some of those franchise fees then get passed on to public access and cable access. This is a federal law from the late 70s or early 80s. It was a carve out that said it's important if we're going to have cable television, if we're going to have all these channels that are national television that don't necessarily originate in the community, it's important to us as a society. We want to still make sure that there is a channel for local voices. So in some ways, we're a holdout from an era that some think is bygone, but I think that's actually a misconception. It's true that fewer people these days have cable television as people have cut the cord, but community media is alive and thriving on the internet, on your Roku or on YouTube on demand or streaming live on our website. It's a lot less about the specific platform, and it really is more about the community access.
I just wanted to add that we got to give props to the activists who made this happen, because I'm sure the government didn't say, you know what, this wouldn't really be fair. Let's make sure the people have a voice. So whoever was the first station to do it was probably the ones who said, you know, we demand this and we know how it would look and we're going to get started. And I know that Boston, they were one of the first in the 70s, but I'm not sure that they were the first. But I heard the war stories when I was there, that we were among the first, and it was a big battle, and a lot of cities said, we want 4 channels. We don't just want one channel. We want one for the government, our local government to use. We want one for our colleges to use, one for K through 12, and one for anybody. And the one for anybody would be like Community Media Center, so that we've got equipment and people can learn how to use the equipment that regular TV channels have, and we want it just as good. And so they set that up, and Grand Rapids is the most widespread community access station I've ever heard of, where there's the 5 threads that Joe mentioned. I haven't found that anywhere else, but I'm sure there are a couple places like that, but it's among the top.
It's incredible. It certainly enriched my life so much, between Wealthy Theater and all the good shows I've seen there and little film festivals, and to like WYC with incredible music that is put out there and the performances. And it's just everything y'all are doing. And also like the Community Media Center has been just such a resource for training people. So we'll definitely talk some more about all that. But Kerri, I'm hearing just the level of importance this is, that it's protected by federal law, this community media. In your experience, has it lived up to that level of impact? Tell us some stories about things that you've seen and stories that you've seen created.
For me, it has. For us, it has. And I hope that it's never in danger of being taken away. If it is, somebody rattle a cage, because we need to make sure that it remains. I hope it's not a hidden gem to a lot of people either. The first time you walk into GRTV or some of the others that are in the area or across the nation, you're surprised at the equipment there, at the offering of take this class and then you can check out this top of the line equipment and use it on your own project. I wonder if maybe the education to the community could be stronger. So I'm glad we're doing this podcast and talking about it a little bit more, because it really is a great resource. Making media is a part of what we do. It's not everything, so we don't have all of the equipment in, a production room somewhere, and just having that ability to be able to reach out and beef up our ability for production value and to have people who can help guide us through it is very important. And some of the other nonprofits that I have worked at have used services like website building and things. There's a lot of different services, not just for filmmaking alumni or video producing and things like that. Podcasts, right? So the services, Joe talked about a few of them, and I think you could really just spend a day there and explore, find out more about it.
Yeah, and partnerships are so important. And it's not just TV stations, right, Kerri? I know that you've worked with the libraries out there in Muskegon, right?
We've worked with the libraries, we've worked with the local health system. Collaborating with different cross-sector partners is a wonderful thing, right? Because you get a lot of different perspective. So with the libraries, we've shown films, but also had panel discussions. People come in from around the world plus local and record that, talk about some of the issues. I think the last one was about the remake of The Little Mermaid. One project that we're doing with GVSU, actually.
Because we realize data justice is as important as media justice.
I'm curious, what is the mission of the Coalition for community development? I'm not familiar with it.
The mission is really to empower one another and to support a thriving community in Muskegon Heights. It's as simple as that, because what we believe is, as an organization, we don't lead. First of all, our board is majority Muskegon Heights residents, so it's not that we're not already embedded in the community as we are. We work very closely with the neighborhood associations, but we're also we call it the CBO, the community-based organization, that can usually be the connector between residents and some of that really grassroots trust, community-driven projects, and working with larger organizations that are really needed as fiduciaries, or because of the way that they might be able to move some of these desires forward with government and funding and things like that. So we work very much as that organization that ensures the resident voice is heard and stays heard. It's really important that the pace can be slower. The pace is not so we can move with the speed of trust, as we say out here, right? And we can move to make sure that everybody's walking along with the project. Sometimes when you do collaborate with larger organizations, as is necessary, they understand it, and then they've got the resources to be able to move and take it away. And the important thing is to not do that, to slow down, be present, and the residents lead the project. And you can learn a lot, and it can really reveal things when you just slow down and make sure that everybody's involved, from the very grassroots to whatever collaborative partner of a larger organization is moving at. And community media understands that. We're very small, and we like it that way. We had a retreat earlier this year about growth, and there's a nimbleness to being small. So we do need to be very resourceful, and you can be very creative when you have to be resourceful as well. But it's mostly private donors who believe in what we do, and it is foundations. And sometimes when we do collaborate with some larger organizations, we tap into federal and state funding as well. But we were an all-volunteer organization for just over 15 years of its existence, and a part-time executive director, me, only came on board in 2018. But we're moving slow in the way we grow intentionally. It's beautiful to be in the space because I have worked at bigger organizations, and it has taught me the beauty of slowing down and just listening and being present and not feeling so checklist-oriented, right? Goal-oriented, we've got to get this done, and by this time. There's a real beauty in that. And again, I find going back to community media and that creating content from such a hyper-local perspective really thrives in being present and moving at that speed.
I'm hearing nimbleness, and I'm also hearing community-led. Are those words that reflect your own experience?
I'm looking at podcasting. It reminds me about we applied for a neighborhood match fund grant from the city to train new podcasters. And so we put out the word that anyone who's ever wanted to have their own podcast, come on out, and our creators will teach you how to design your program, record it, and edit it, and put it out. And we talk about nimble. We were just so surprised at how many people came in and said, I want to have a podcast. And we say, great, what's it going to be about? And they said, well, whatever you want to interview me about. And so many people wanted to be interviewed, but they did not want to think about what they would want to have a whole series about. So it was funny. We really had to pull things out of people, and they would lose interest quickly. So there were a lot of surprises. There just always are whenever you think you know what people want, which is why Kerri does what she does, right? Because people who come up with programming of any kind think they know what it is that the recipients want. And a lot of times the recipients don't even know what they want. And so you got to ask a lot of questions to help get to the bottom of that.
Joe, that idea of training, I mean, I know GRTV has a robust training abilities there. Tell me a little bit about what your programs are.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a huge component of what GRTV and the CMC does. And it's a big component of becoming a member. That's what's great about community media and this center is it's yours. It's your TV station. It's your community resources, which I think remains very unique. We have this model that, imagine it as almost like a library resource, where we have these tools and resources. You can come in here and take classes. You can take certification classes to be certified on the various equipment and the facilities that we have. And then if you're a member in good standing and you've taken a certification class through our education department, then you have access. You have access to this equipment without an additional cost. And that is really important to community media, is that level of access.
Now, as much as we can on this podcast, shout from the rooftops to the students listening here. That is, you said free access to equipment with training. That is incredible. Like, I hope every student listening to this and people living around Grand Rapids hear that, like, you are providing just such a service.
You get out of school and there's a big shock factor after you've had access to that equipment room. You've gotten familiar with the equipment that you use to create your media. You reserve it, you go and check it out. And as soon as you're out of school in the desert of the real, now I really want to activate, but I can't afford that $6,000 camera that I'm used to having access to automatically. We won't call it for free because school's really expensive, but it's baked in, right? That is a huge resource. And I think far too few new alumni realize that this resource is in your community.
You are the city's equipment room, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can go there and make a documentary, make a show. Like, it's such an incredible thing.
But then a component of that, an important component of that, is when you become a member of the Community Media Center, when you take the certification classes at GRTV and you use the equipment, you are also agreeing to provide what you create for the community. So that's the agreement that you make. You check out that equipment, we get you access to that, and then when you create that media, you then submit your finished projects to us, and that's going to go on GRTV. That becomes the programming that is on GRTV. And if your audience where you want to reach them is on YouTube, upload it to YouTube, right? Reach your audiences where you want to, but also we expect that to be part of this public access. Your voice is our community collective voice. So that's the social contract.
And that's why there's so much great stuff on GRTV. It's so much fun to watch. So if I'm looking at the three of you in our little Zoom Brady Bunch thing I got going on here, every time one of you talks, I'm seeing your eyes light up. I'm seeing y'all nod when somebody else is talking. And we started this conversation talking about the humanity that you find in community media. And I just want to ask you about each of that. What puts your heart on fire for this segment of media, this community media? Jasmine, you want to start off with that?
I think it is just watching people recognize their power for the first time, and just to realize that others want to hear their voice and find their stories fascinating and find their experiences helpful to learn about. And just watching people go from, like, for our program, we were just laughing last night at how one of the creators was showing off his new demo reel. And when he came in 6 months ago, he didn't even really know what a demo reel was. And he was asking us, I really love shooting videos and I love working out, and I find it really fun to shoot videos at the gym because the lighting in there is just kind of dramatic, and I'm just shooting myself working out, and then people are coming up and asking me to shoot them working out. And so I'm here to say, can I charge people for that? That's where he was 6 months ago. And he's one of the ones who just quit his job and is working full time. And he just finished his demo reel, and he's got so much work and getting paid well. He's paying his bills. I just asked him last night, are you paying all your bills? And he said, yes, I am. So it is just really fun to watch his excitement grow, and just to hear, as he did work on things, to have everybody looking at his work and saying, that is awesome. I love that angle that you chose. And I can see why you like shooting at the gym. That makes a lot of sense. Have you tried talking to the gym? Maybe they want videos. What kind of videos have you thought about? And just to watch people come alive is exceedingly rewarding to me. And it's just fun to see people blossom and realize their power and their abilities.
I relate to that so hard. I do a lot of work with the Mosaic Film Experience in town, and we'll go into a high school or middle school and put an iPad or teach them how to use mobile apps. And just the light that comes out of their eyes, and a lot of times too in the beginning of the class, people will be into themselves or like not really showing up. And then as soon as there is that moment where you just feel them seizing their voice, and that is so cool. What a great way to say that. Kerri, can you tell us about what lights your heart on fire? Jasmine said that so eloquently. What do you got for us?
I think that it's my evolution into more of the grassroots nonprofit world. I started out in the music business and in marketing, worked my way up the ladder there. So there was a lot of sales videos that had rock stars and things in it as they came into town. And then I moved out to LA, worked for a movie studio, and came back and actually went back to school to Grand Valley as a non-traditional student. I think I was around 30 or something like that, right, to finish my degree. The filmmaking, storytelling bug was there, but I didn't necessarily have a huge passion for a certain kind. And I think that it was at Grand Valley that I took some of the more theory-related classes, Dr. Perrine in particular,
Yes.
that sort of my mind just, whoa, there's so much more to think about. Representation and the form and content and how powerful the use of it is to frame a message, right? And so much so that I went on to get my master's more in the critical. And I think coming out of that, I was still working a lot in marketing. I worked at the Grand Rapids Art Museum for several years before moving out to Muskegon. And I really decided that I wanted to continue to understand that representation and the powerful meaning that is created and how so many voices are not heard that much, especially in the nonprofits that are doing such great work on such small budgets, right? So there's a lot of good things that are going on, but not so much using this powerful medium to tell their stories and to get more volunteers and funding and whatnot. And I think that in particular, one of the things that just working and bringing that sort of filmmaking background from Grand Valley and other areas of my past, since we are an alumni podcast, just want to reassure people that it can be a zigzag path of how you proceed with it. But working in the nonprofit world for Coalition for Community Development and going to a lot of different sort of community sort of representations where they're reporting out issues in the community. The same old charts and graphs are used as they're using statistics and talking about especially marginalized communities and working for years within these. I'm like, how is that data being collected? How is it being analyzed? How is that happening? Because the stories coming out from a grassroots level, there's got to be a level of trust to really get that sort of authentic sort of data. So we actually reached out to Grand Valley, to the social science department, and started a project where we first brought data collecting skills to leaders of those small grassroots nonprofits in Muskegon Heights and Muskegon, or residents who are interested in collecting, learning how quantitative data is collected and understanding how to collect that, because the closer you are to collecting that data, the truer it will be, right? And then learning how to report it out. Now, of course, you can use this, the data is power, to apply for grants. They love that data that proves sort of a need, right? And the needs of the community. Partnering with some of the larger organizations, advocating it to city government, and here are my statistics. So you can't get away so much from the charts and graphs for sure, but what we wanted to do is to not only have that data that was collected more close to home, but turn it into a video series. So we received some funding to be able to do this, and themes that emerged that the residents really wanted to unpack and talk about, because everybody says you've got to gain trust in certain communities. What is that? It's different to a lot of people. It's like talking about what is equity. That's different to a business as it is to a grassroots organization or to a hospital, right? Prosperity, especially generational, economic, thriving in the community, health, mind, body, and spirit, culture and tradition, a lot of wonderful traditions and cultural nuances to talk about, and other lived experiences, right? And so within that, the data that emerged and how people talked about it, we then armed ourselves with our cameras and microphones and went out and talked to different people about how would you like to talk about this or express this. And so we've got some who participated in a talk show and talked about this issue. We have a person who is a dancer. She's a dance instructor, and so she's a choreographer, and she wanted to do a dance that expressed what trust means or prosperity. We actually we had a spoken word artist who wanted to write a spoken word version of Romeo and Juliet that was modern day, based in Muskegon and Muskegon Heights, called Rome and Julissa. And we helped put that together, and they're local actors, and that was a lot of fun. It's done with a lot of green screen, so that'll be fun to edit that. But just these different ways to approach those themes. People think they understand what it is and move forward really quickly on the idea of trust, but that's something that really slow down and unpack it on that humanity, that level of person to person, and get to know. It's amazing how you really find that camaraderie in these different sort of ways that people talk about issues like that, and you learn from each other in a big way from these small individual stories collectively. We didn't want just one interpretation, but several in this video series that we're doing. So as you can tell, that's what's getting my blood going right now, is that
I see it and I feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough that I got to see that firsthand. And that was specifically a project where I know that you put them in the driver's seat and earned back that trust because they had a bad experience with a filmmaker previously. So there are ways that local filmmaking can go wrong, and you really help gain that trust back and help them tell their own story for their centennial anniversary. It was a really incredible community project to be a part of.
And with you as well. Everybody who was involved in that, we went back and showed raw footage to the group, and never were they left behind in any of the processes that moved forward. And all those stories of the people who are now in their 80s and 90s who had lived through the civil rights era were just
it's for community by community,
amazing.
and you're out there doing it. That's incredible. Joe, what lights your heart on fire? Like, it takes a special person to be in here, community media, programming, GRTV. What gets your blood pumping?
What Kerri and Jasmine are saying resonates, of course. I mean, I think we have a lot of crossover in our missions and our beliefs about this work. Similarly, I started out in my career post-school crewing, film, TV, below the line, G&E, Transpo, that sort of thing. Shout out to John Philbin, now retired, on the summer film program. That was huge. That was really, I know it exists to this day. That's a meaningful way as a student that we got hands-on experience and were able to confidently translate our skills into the world of film production. I did that for a few years, and then after a while, wasn't so interested in all the heavy lifting that came along with that work. I wasn't quite getting the returns in meaning and impact. Moved over to doing more of the work that I'm doing nowadays, but in the commercial and the corporate world. I love producing and production management. I'm well suited for the work, but the work that I was doing for a number of years, the end product wasn't particularly meaningful to me. Ultimately, how I end up here is, for me, it is all about community. I admire activists and activism. We've talked about that a little bit already, but I'm rarely the one on the picket line or making public comment at a city council meeting or something. I like to tell stories. I like to connect with people. I really like to listen and learn. I think the greatest impact that I can have is at the community level. My direct impact, I think, is on other people, other individuals. I think we all learn from each other. We all influence one another. I'm all about being a part of active support systems. And community media right now, I think, is both more important, at least as important, but arguably more important than ever. It's also more fragile than ever. I think it's fragile because of this evolving landscape of telecom and cable companies, the franchise fees, attrition of viewers from cable to streaming, and also just in general community resources, schools and libraries and public media, these sorts of very important, crucial resources being defunded increasingly, being attacked. I think the importance is because media literacy and access to accurate information is as important as it's ever been. And in many ways, it's more fraught than it's been in a long time. To me, the work that I'm able to do, the impact that I can make is here in communities at a grassroots community, individual level. That's where I feel like I'm most useful.
I think that is commendable. That's incredible. We're taking a short break to tell you about the Chuck Peterson Memorial Fellowship. The fellowship was established by Chuck Peterson's family and friends to assist the upper-level students in the film and video program at GVSU who are working on creative projects that support the nonprofit sector in their community. Kyle Matchame, the 2020 recipient of that fellowship, describes the benefits of the support he received.
When going through this fellowship, there are 3 separate parts of yourself that I think get to experience a lot of development. The first is as a student, because this is a learning process. You get to learn how to work with a client on your own, independently out in the world, away from the classroom like you would in something like producing for clients. And the second one would be as a video maker, as a video producer, as someone who has respect for the work that they're doing and wants to improve on themselves and produce a final product that can be used out in the real world. And then the third one would be as a citizen. You know, you're not making video for an entertainment value or for some kind of commercial purpose. It's for a nonprofit. It's for a direct benefit in your community. And being a citizen of that community, understanding how you can directly impact and improve it is a really valuable experience that I think the fellowship teaches you to be as a student, as a filmmaker, and as a citizen. All 3 of those things are directly a part of this process that you get to learn and ask yourself, how do I want to be seen and how do I want to act as these 3 roles?
For more information and to donate to the scholarship, visit the link in the description. Now back to the show. So Jasmine, we heard a little bit about Kerri's, she said she had a zigzagging career path. We just heard about a career path that kind of stretched from Grand Valley through film to community media. From Joe, what was your career path? How did you end up where you are now?
Well, I went to college in Santa Barbara, and when I was done there, I wanted to move to Boston because of having had a lot of fun experiences there. So just got in my car and drove out there and found a place to live and started temping at all different kinds of places just to have some income and to explore the city. I found that to be a really fun way to get to know a new city, is just plop yourself into an office at different addresses all over the city for a few days each time. I never forget one of the places I landed I was sitting there at my desk doing my thing, and all of a sudden the entire floor of probably 100 people vanished. And I thought, have I gone deaf? Like, was there a fire alarm and I didn't hear it? Like, what just happened? There was one final person heading out to the elevator. I said, what is happening? And he said, oh, it's lunch break. And I'm like, people are this detached from their work that they can just everyone can just drop what they're doing. I always have to wrap up whatever my task is. And I just thought, okay, this tells me something about the kind of work I don't want to have. Like, I don't want to live like that. I was a communication major, and my dream was to work at the PBS station. And they just kept saying, you're brand new, like you just graduated. You can't start at a top level station having just graduated from college. Go to a small town, come back. And so I ended up letting one of my temp jobs turn into it was a publishing job, educational publishing, and I kind of liked that. And so I did that for a couple years, but I was still looking at those jobs with WGBH and seeing if there's anything I could possibly do. And eventually an educational publishing job came up there. And before I knew it, I was working on a program called Zoom. And anyway, so I was working for WGBH for a couple of years, and then I ended up moving to Grand Rapids and was looking around for things that were going on here, and I found that Calvin College had a TV show. And I really wanted to have my own interview show after having watched a lot of what was going on at GBH. Interview show was my favorite. So I found that it was produced by students, and so they kept on turning over who was in charge of this TV show, and it just didn't have any consistency. And the guy who was in charge of it had put all of these meeting notes out on the internet because the internet was still kind of new. And so he was like, just let me put stuff on the internet because I'm supposed to be in charge of the website. So let me see what papers are around that I can put on. And it just happened to be all these notes about that show because that was in his desk. So I ended up reading all this and then contacting him when I found out I was moving to Grand Rapids because of my husband's job. I said, hey, it sounds like you guys could really use an adult to be in charge of this thing and just keep it consistent and do this and this and this. And he's like, how do you know all this? This is amazing. He forgot he had put all this on the website. So yeah, I was able to take over the TV show, and I just kept on working on it and getting it better and better until I was ready to approach WGVU and ask them if they would start airing it. And they did. So it was on community access when I arrived. But I got WGVU to take it on, and then eventually got it to the point where I said, I feel like we're ready to offer this nationally. What do you think? And they said, all right, let's give it a try. And it worked, and 60 stations across the country picked it up. And so that was really fun. It was called Inner Compass, and it was a talk show about ethical, social justice, religious issues. So I did that for about 15 years. And then was looking for something else and found that book by Todd Robinson, and just thought that was a lot of stuff to unpack, and I wanted more people to be able to benefit from that.
Wow. I hear so much in all three of your stories that I think will help students. And it's never a straight shot, right? You never call your shot and you're there, right? You had to do so much to get to that place at WGBH. And
yeah, I mean, the only thing that we can be sure of with our career path is that it's not going to go where we want it to go. That's the only place that we can be sure it's not going to go, is where we wanted it to go.
I wanted to say that it's up to us sometimes to bring this skill set and passion. If they had hired a different executive director than me 5 years ago, I don't know that storytelling via, a visual medium would have been so much a part of the job and the ways that we're getting things done. Like the education kit we created for the local county museum, which had very little information about a significant population here until we approached them and created this content. So to the students who want to do this, don't think it's a singular path or even a job that you think is a job that traditionally has a visual medium or storytelling aspect. Whatever job or place or people or mission that's attracting you, how can you bring your skills to enhance that job?
I think another way to say it, Kerri, is just that you can create the job that you wish you could have. You don't have to say, well, there isn't a job that does all these things that I want. So then the question becomes, how can you get paid for doing that? And that's a little more challenging. But I think, what I'm learning is that I need to find the people who have the same passion, and then they would want to support that.
It's just that community component. This is so true. Talking about creating those opportunities, right? Knowing what you're interested in or what you're wanting to pursue, finding those opportunities, making it for yourself. It's building that community, right? And Jasmine just said, finding those like-minded people or the people who also believe in what you're trying to accomplish, right? We do this through the community component of all of this. I know that we're coming at this from a media lens, but media is secondary to community. And media is one way that we're talking about building community. It's finding your community. It's knowing those other like-minded people, or the diversity of thought that really helps us explore these opportunities.
Totally. I think I heard in your story too, Joe, sometimes you have to ask yourself, am I enjoying what I'm doing? And it sounds like when you were lifting that heavy equipment, at some point you said, I'm really not. There's not impact in this. You were looking for something more. And that's something that I have had to ask myself. And I think especially 2020 pandemic shutdown, like all that, like really had me asking myself, am I enjoying what I'm doing? And some parts it was yes. And in some parts it was no. And what I realized is I thought I was trying to give myself steps to get somewhere else. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm enjoying what I'm doing here. Like this community media, making shows with Kerri and working with WGVU, the PBS station, and things like that, telling Michigan stories, Grand Rapids stories. And now I'm at Detroit PBS. Finding ways to say, I love what I'm doing is so important. That's really cool that you all found that. Sticking in this idea of career and talking to some of the college students who might be listening, what are some lessons that you learned while you were in college that you're using still today, whether that be at Grand Valley for Kerri and Joe or out west for Jasmine?
I know that I really learned how important a team is and how you really rely on their passion and expertise in what they're doing so you can focus on what you're doing so that ultimately whatever project you're on has all of that. And then I always want to work with passionate people. I mean, I was laughing when I heard the story about the lunch break, because I don't want to work with those people either. I want to work with people who are passionate about what they're doing. And when you are in school and you're learning the skills, certainly you're learning the practical aspects. Definitely take those classes to understand the impacts, so that you're not repeating or making really pedantic films either. But I think that the beauty of being in school is that network you're creating of those passionate people. You get out of there into the real world or whatever, as Joe was saying, is people aren't going to talk to you for hours about film. But wow, can you really have those conversations and develop those? And those are going to be your friends in contact wherever they go around the world. Keep in touch, because you really shared something special with a group of passionate people you might not find quite that way again. But I would say search for it. If it's not quite in that sort of large capacity, for instance, when I did move out to LA, I think one of the mistakes that I made is that I did work for a big movie studio, but it was more in the get the coffee kind of thing, right? So your creativity and all of that, I think the mistake I made is I didn't find a smaller community creative that you could share those ideas, talk those things out, and the largeness of it just drained me. And then I realized I was a Midwestern girl at heart, so that was important too. But seek that community. We need each other, and look at to go, even right here where we talk, go here and they've got equipment for you. Go over here and they might have a connection to such and such or information about that. That community in college, enjoy it, grow from it, and seek out that community as well after you leave.
Sure. And I think the Alumni Association too, like we're working really hard to make sure that kind of community is still out there for people when they graduate. Joe, biggest lesson being at Grand Valley? What's helping you out there programming for GRTV today?
I think being involved with a lot of stuff, just to piggyback off of what Kerri was just saying, like that, there are so many opportunities, especially at a larger school like Grand Valley. And it's just, there's so much great stuff going on. Get involved with stuff. Do clubs, do stuff. You don't know where you're going to meet your community. I'm fortunate that I still maintain a very tight-knit and meaningful community of fellow film and video alum from my era there, but I have just as many connections from people who I met in completely different areas of study because I was interested in being involved in the Kung Fu Club or whatever.
Were you really in the Kung Fu Club?
Yeah, for a minute I was, but I tried a whole bunch of different stuff. But also I think, in general, if you're a film and video student, if you're interested in production, at least for me, the summer film program was crucial. I don't know that I would be where I am now if I hadn't gotten the hands-on confidence that I did. You learn a lot in the classroom, you get to do a lot of fun things, but for me personally, I know that the summer film really made the difference. It gave me the confidence to then go and apply for a job as a grip on a film because I knew that I could do it.
Yeah, and I know too, like, so after I had done the summer film, like I started to feel like as I was doing, crewing for other things, I was like, I've already done a big show. Like it gets those like first time jitters out. Like I know how the set works. I know what the code is if somebody has to go to the bathroom on the walkie-talkies. All of a sudden you just know all that. It like really smooths out those jitters. I agree with that 100%. Thinking back to college, Jasmine, what were some big lessons that are still fueling you, pushing you forward today?
Well, I think mine was more inward focused. I think some of the main things I learned at Westmont College, shout out to Westmont College, was the appreciation for art and beauty and rhetoric. I had a rhetoric professor, and I would have been a rhetoric major if there was one, but it was just called communication. But he was all about rhetoric and just the beauty and the art of language and choosing your words carefully because everyone counts and paying attention to the words that other people are using and unpacking them. I had some art classes where you just had to sit and look at a paper clip for a half an hour and try and just stare at it and have to think about all that you were seeing just until you were past boredom, about bored to tears, and just have to write about it. What are you seeing when you see this paper clip? I remember that. I haven't thought about this at all, but it's a question that's making these things pop up for me of just slowing down and paying attention to what is around you and what people are saying and how they're saying it and how you are going to talk about matters that are important to you and how you're going to utilize your own power by giving it words, because words have so much power. And the way we talk about ourselves, the way we talk about our community, the way we talk about our story, whether it's going to be a victim narrative or an overcoming narrative, that's playing out right now in the work that we're doing, because Todd Robinson was very focused on avoiding the victim narrative. And it is so often used that, especially with marginalized people, I mean, even the term marginalized people, that's a victim word right there. Paying close attention and trying to find better words for things, because, well, one of our heroes in the book says that those who have the power to define have the power to determine, and that's how it starts.
So a connection that I hear between all three of you is you've all talked about the importance of classes or experiences that weren't strictly film or strictly storytelling, whether it's the Kung Fu Club or taking rhetoric classes. I think that is something and I think Grand Valley does that really well, requiring gen eds or themes, getting people out of their comfort zones, mixing up with other scholars. I think that's really important and special. These ideas that Jasmine's brought up about how to tell an impactful story and work with people who are trusting you with their stories. What are some other tips, Kerri, that you might have along those lines of how to talk with somebody who might be telling a traumatic event on film or opening up to themselves and trusting you? I'm sure there are students listening to this who can't wait to go out and make the world better with their cameras, but what are some cautions to be worried about or to watch yourself for?
Framing is everything, right? So it's how is the story framed. I think that it's important to not just ask questions, as Jasmine says, from a victim framing. Tell me about the crime in your neighborhood, or how's that? That's already framing it, right? If you ask someone, what do you love about your neighborhood? You will hear wonderful stories about, right. I love my neighborhood. Everybody from the mayor walks by the town drunk and everybody knows who they are. Make sure they get home okay. And I would hate to live in one of those communities where people drive home, the garage door goes up, they drive in, it closes, you never see them again, right? Because I think that you will allow the person to tell the story they want to tell. And I think it is, if you have some history of studying different techniques and things like that, you might hear if maybe someone is nervous or moving down a path, you might not just run with that so much.
Yeah, I like what you said about the whole person, right? Like seeing them as a human, as a storyteller, not just as a part of your show or, your ticket to the next story. Like it's very important to really see the person in front of you. I agree with that. Joe, as a programmer, how do you deal with tough content? Are people bringing stories that you have to really consider to put on the air?
So I will say that's not my purview here. What I'm doing here is this other component where it's more like reactive, working with organizations to produce content for them. So I'll be working with a nonprofit organization. They have a message, they have a mission, right? So my purview here primarily is to help produce media. There is a distinction to be made, which is GRTV as an entity, we don't have an editorial stake in what's going on the air. And that's actually really important, right? When you are a member of the community, you come in, you use the resources, you produce television, you submit it, you fill out a cablecast form that says, to the extent that it is legal for me to air and broadcast this on television, you take responsibility. But we're not making any editorial decisions. So, in fact, there are no difficult decisions to make. This is truly the community's platform. It's community television.
So maybe another way to phrase that is you're telling stories of nonprofits. I'm sure these nonprofits are doing incredible and sometimes difficult work. How do you think about working and telling those success stories of the nonprofits in the area?
It's a lot of fun because it's not very often just out of the box. Everything starts with a conversation. I don't do a lot of prospecting. I'm here to support the organizations who need us and who utilize our resources. It really depends. We have a lot of conversations about, you've got a little bit of a budget, you know that media is important. Sometimes those conversations are, we want this sort of impact, we want to do this with this video, we know exactly how we want to deliver this and who our audience is. But just as often, it's a conversation of, we've never really had a budget to produce media before, but we know it's important. We know that we're not reaching the community that we're here to serve. We know that we have these resources of our own, and we know that there are members of the community who could benefit from what we have to offer, but we know that they don't know about it. We get to help fill that gap or bridge that gap. So it's always a conversation. It might be, we don't know how to do this. What do you think that we should do? So we talk about the tools and the resources that we have. We talk about, do you already have an audience or impact on social media? Should we make a video for social media? Should we do a live stream to help you reach members of the community? Are you doing a forum that you're inviting people to join in person, but you also want to reach people who aren't likely to come or able to come in person? So everything is a conversation.
Yeah, expanding that access. I hear even in that answer. So as we're getting close to wrapping up here, I've got one last big question. So we're recording this. It's October 24th, 2024. We're just about a week or so away from a huge national election that's razor thin. We have no idea at this point in history what's going to happen next, right? Both sides are stressed out about what the future could hold. As we're here talking about community media, I'm hearing just a lot of hope and a lot of action that's happening. You are three people who are out there making incredible change and making people in your community's lives better. As we're thinking about what people can do in their communities, what is it about what you're doing that gives you hope for the future, that helps you feel like there's action and hope? I'll talk about this idea of hope.
Yeah, good question, Randy. I returned to Grand Rapids after many years living in New York. I built my career in the city, and a big part of returning to Grand Rapids for me was something that I could never really get a hold on to the extent that it's important to me. A city like New York was a really cohesive sense of community. You can be in the proverbial center of the universe in New York City and have a community of your own, but still feel isolated. I wanted to come back to a city like Grand Rapids where building a community feels a little more holistic to me, and where your contributions really can make meaningful contributions at a community level. In that regard, concerning ourselves with national elections and global politics will have an impact on all of us, but no matter what the future holds for any of us, we will all perpetually be members of communities. I think that immediate impact, the impact that we can make on our direct community scale, to me, that's what's most important. No matter what happens in elections, we're still neighbors with each other. That's where I feel my impact is most resonant, so I just try to focus on that.
That is beautiful. Neighbors will still help each other out. Community is still there, taking care of each other.
That's what we can do, no matter what. We can vote once in a while when the polls are open, but every single day we can live in our communities and be good neighbors and make meaningful impact. I really think ultimately that's where individuals can make a big difference.
Beautiful. Kerri VanderHoff, tell us about what gives you hope right now. Community media, we're thinking about our neighbors. What gives you hope?
I have the feeling that in the last year or so, it's put down the phones and go talk to your neighbor. Go to an event and talk to the person next to you. Get to know each other and have conversations. And I don't think I'm the only one who's longing for more of that. And I do think, especially with the younger generation, I do teach adjunct, so I get to see the 20-year-olds rotating through. And I do agree that I think that they see the world differently and do see more of an us and working together. And I think that there's hope in the next generation. And I think there's hope in talking to your neighbors. And I think there's hope in this sort of type of work in community that people are ready to maybe dive into a little bit more and grow the voice, the people, the community, the world that we want to be and live in.
Yes, man, I have given you a huge ovation. That is beautiful to say. Now that everybody is worked up and ready to come volunteer, how do people find you, get a hold of you, or come participate?
grcmc.org. That is where you're going to find all of it. Where you're going to find GRTV, you're going to find volunteer opportunities, how to sign up for classes, how to access all of our resources, and the website that is also built in-house by our brilliant web services staff, which is yet another service that the GRCMC provides. It's all there under one digital roof. I think you're going to find what you're looking for. and you're going to find the person to reach out to. Or come down and check us out at 711 Bridge Street on the west side of town. We are your community media center. Come on down and see what we have in store.
Kerri, are you looking for volunteers? If alumni or students want to come help work out in Muskegon Heights or in West Michigan?
We do, and we have. We've had internship programs and other ways that we've worked with GVSU and the wonderful film video program there. You can find us at MHCCD, that's MuskegonHeightsCCD.org, MHCCD.org, and you'll be able to watch some of our trailers and video programs that we have on there that were actually created with some of our GVSU interns. Lots of good things going on.
So cool. And finally, Jasmine, tell us about how people can get involved with GR MyFi and your City Within a City project. I'm sure students and alumni can't wait to get a hold of you.
Yeah, well, we have a website, grmyfi.org, and we also have one for Grandstand Pictures, our production company, and a City Within a City film. The way to get in touch would be grmyfi@gmail.com. And people can ask to come check out our meetings and fill out an interest form and tell us what it is that they hope to pursue creatively, and we can go from there.
Thank you all so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining us tonight. My name's Randy Strobel. I've been your host on this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you for listening.